You tell me when we're going. Hi, how are you?
That was great, so good.
Thank you. It came together.
Yeah.
Well,
God gives us what we need.
very interested in your definitions of wisdom, because we just read in Kings, wisdom means political craftiness.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's that earthly wisdom, but interesting. You ready? What do I have to do? It is live, though. Okay, cool. All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome to our Sunday Forum here with St. Stephen's Episcopal Church. It is Recovery Sunday here in the Diocese of Alabama, and so as part of how we're observing that here at St. Stephen's today, of course, we have some special prayers during the service, but we're also using our Sunday Forum time today to shine a light on recovery and people's experiences of that. And so we've invited several of our parishioners here who are willing to kind of reflect and share with us on that today. We have Kay Adams, Sandy Simmons, Pam Moore, and Steve Moore. And so I will let them introduce themselves and kind of share a bit about how they're coming into this topic of recovery, sort of what brings them here, and then we'll get into some other things to prompt discussion. We do have this mic set up here at the lectern, and that's for when we get toward the end of our time, we'll have some Q&A time, and so we're continuing to experiment with how best to meet the needs of the audience here and also online. And so if you have a question or comment once we get to the Q&A time, you can make your way to the lectern, or if that's hard, I can always bring the mic over, but feel free to step over there to share a comment or question when we get to that. So I will pass off the mic and let you all begin.
Hey, good morning. My name is Steve Moore. I've been in recovery myself for almost 32 years, and for almost 30 years I've been working in recovery, working in addiction recovery. I'm one of the members of the Moore Institute, which is a private practice that specializes in helping folks get better. All people who are affected by any form of substance use disorder. We also have a thing that I'm the executive director of called the Addiction Research Foundation, which is a nonprofit to try to understand why people get better and why people don't get better. And so our heart, and I'm saying our because this is my wife next to me, our heart is really in the trying to understand what's happening with people and why the things we're doing are helpful or not helpful, and how we can be better at it. We've spent a lot of years trying to understand what's going on with folks who have this thing that we call substance use disorder now. We don't use addiction, alcoholism as much as we used to. And so we're using substance use disorder now to try to understand it even in an even more detailed way. And also to understand how folks get better. And that's really important to us, who gets better and why. So we study that, we teach that, and then we treat folks to try to help.
And my name is Pam Moore, married to Steve Moore. And like him, I've been in practice for, I've been a little over 30 years. I've been sober a little over 34 years. I took a different path than most people with getting sober, which I think is what sparked my interest in the many ways that you can get sober. And in addition to what Steve said about who we are and how we came to be here, we just wrote a book called Natural Pathways of Recovery, and which really is about that there's many, many ways to get sober, and many, many ways for family members to deal with substance use disorder. And like we're just really interested in not how people get sober, but what's going to work for each individual person. And There's Sandy.
Thank you. I'm Sandy Simmons, and I realized 21 years ago this fall that I have a loved one, a dearly loved one, that was affected by substance use issues. And on further exploration, I came to realize that both of our family trees are pretty much have the thorns of substance abuse issues and the issues related to loving someone with a substance abuse. And I have been a presenter for contemplative outreach in bringing the contemplative prayer as an 11th step practice. And that has been very helpful for me. And finding the rooms of Al-Anon has also been extremely helpful for me. I'm very grateful to Becky for inviting us to take part in this panel, and for the Episcopal Church in bringing awareness and support to recovering people in the recovery community.
I'm Kay Adams. I also have a loved one who has substance abuse, which I would call an addict. I was blindsided with the information, and it was devastating to realize that my perfect family wasn't really perfect. I spent years being very ashamed. I didn't want to tell anybody. I kept everything a secret, and then I got so low, I was avoiding everybody, all my friends, everybody, staying home all the time, just really in a dark, dark place. And my daughter said, "Mom, you're going to Al-Anon." And the Al-Anon was right here at St. Stephen's, and it has been here for years, and I had no idea that we had an Al-Anon program here. So I came. I didn't want to. I was worried about who I would see. I didn't want my hidden secrets to be known, but I found a path for recovery. I also learned that I was also an addict because of trying to control my loved one, and that is impossible.
Thank you all for kind of introducing who you are and sort of what you're bringing and your vantage point on all of this. I think that kind of our first thing to kind of get discussion going that I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on is that issue that Kay was just mentioning about shame and guilt that seems the distinctive ways that works with issues of substance use and recovery and of everyone touched by that. Like, why is there a different feeling of how open we can be with substance use and recovery versus other struggles that individuals and families may be going through? And then how that whole idea of shame and guilt, how does that intersect with what we are about here in the church, which is about grace and mercy, right? So it's a big topic. We could just fill the rest of the time on that. So we'll see where they go with it. So whoever wants to start.
I'll start.
The Episcopal Diocese has a recovery ministry, and on a recovery weekend, there is usually what we call a journey day, and it was Friday in Huntsville. And I went to Journey Day, and our Bishop Curry introduced or did the opening for the program. And I would like to quote some of her words. about hidden shame. Well, mine and hers. Hidden shame, that's what I suffered with for a long time. What I found out eventually was I did not cause it. I cannot control it, and there is not a cure at all for it. Addiction is a killer that thrives in secrecy, is what Bishop Curry said. And the more I thought about it, it is. Because the more you hide it, nothing gets done. Inaction is an action itself, so that somebody has to take some sort of action, and the substance abuse person and the person who is caring for that person and loves that person dearly needs to figure out what their path will be. I could say more about it.
Great. So I think that all of us have our programs for security, affection, and control. And people that are affected by substance abuse have their ways, and people that love people that have substance abuse have their ways. But in many ways, we're looking at this wrong. And I mean those of us that are affected by this disease, but those of us in the world. When we think of those things in our humanity that we are less than proud of, it is an invitation to surrender to God, that has the ability to help us when we cannot help ourselves. And whether it's an addiction or some illness or just our mortality, we are all powerless. We all have issues that we have to deal with, and we all deal with shame on some level, because we're not perfect, we're human beings. And this program is a gateway to be able to heal from that shame, and a gateway and a way to be able to develop a deeper relationship with God. And in doing that, I believe that that shame can be healed. But yes, I have experienced profound shame, crippling shame, and I know that my loved ones have as well. But I believe there's tremendous hope. And again, I think a lot of us can do life without believing that we need God. And in many ways, addiction gives us a head start in recognizing how well we're doing without God, and to recognize how much we need a power greater than ourselves.
For me, when I was thinking, the problem I think that people with substance use disorder have that's kind of different is they did cause it. Because most of the heartache in the family really is from the actions of the substance abuser. And so I think that when a person is trying to get sober, it's profoundly hard because you've been impaired all these years and have never had to really deal with the fact that you did cause the pain in the family. And when people are in our program, and when I know when I got sober, sometimes it can be so overwhelming, the fact that I did say that, I did do that, I did steal from them, I did, I did do these terrible things under the influence that most people don't do. And I think that part of the reason that there is so much shame is, even if this is a disease, cancer doesn't cause you to steal from your mama, where addiction does. And everyone, I always tell people, everyone has like an Uncle Joe that's ruined every Christmas holiday, and And so that's why I think people, when they first meet a person, even in recovery, their first instinct is about Uncle Joe and like how exhausting it was every time Uncle Joe came to the family holiday event. And I think it's hard. I think we don't want to talk about that part, because it's unpleasant. But it ends up making recovering from this a little bit harder than recovering from other diseases where you haven't done things that have caused harm to other people. And what makes this harder for people, and I think the church and the community around, is because they have had these experiences with, as I call it, Uncle Joe, that you can't make go away. So when they talk about recovery being a journey, I think a lot of the journey is how long and how hard it is for all involved to recover from that, whether it's the community, the family, and the person, because there has been woundedness all the way around.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that, and that all makes sense to me. I also, I think that it's human for us to always try to ask ourselves, why is something going wrong? And who's to blame here? There's the story of when something's going wrong, who sinned, this person or their parents? And so we're always looking for, the answer to that. Why is this person the way that they are? What makes them do this? And we're always looking for an explanation, I think, that will satisfy this notion that it probably wouldn't happen to me. We'd like to find a way to blame it on some bad thing that the other person did, or some bad thing that their family did, or some bad place that they came from. Because then I think it makes us feel more comfortable. We go, oh, well, then that wouldn't happen to me. And so I think the reason that we're always looking for a way to blame whatever goes wrong is because it makes the rest of us feel more comfortable. Now, it doesn't make me feel comfortable because it happened to me. And everybody can point to me and go, oh, now I know who sinned. It was him. It was him. He's the one that did it. And so whenever anything is going wrong with human beings, we have this real tendency to try to figure out, oh, what bad choices did they make? What thing did they do that I am avoiding so that it won't happen to me? So because of that, with this thing that we call alcoholism and drug addiction, we have this real tendency to point to them and say, well, clearly we know this is their fault. We know this is their fault. Of course, I agree with Pam. A lot of the bad things that happened really indeed, were things that they did. But the reason why they became a substance use person, why they were an alcoholic and addict, we have a real tendency to always blame on choice that they made. You chose to put it in your body. You chose to do this. You chose for this to happen. And for that reason, it allows us to sort of eliminate the thing that Becky mentioned, grace. It allows us to eliminate then, feeling sorry for, or it allows us to eliminate compassion, because you did it to yourself. But I have to tell you, that's a very dangerous path for us to walk on, because how many things that go wrong with human beings today have to do with choices that we make, things that we do and don't do to and for ourselves. How many things that go wrong with human beings today have to do with choices that we make? And how frequently, though, do we feel better when we hear that somebody who got sick, oh, they smoked? Well, that explains it. Oh, they got sick. Well, they were an anti-vaxxer. Oh, well, that explains it. And somehow then we feel better about the sickness because it was their fault. So I think that the core reason for shame and the core reason that we're allowed to be less compassionate is because we get to blame the person. I think blame and shame go together. And I don't think that we can afford that. I don't think we can afford it as a people. I certainly don't think we can afford it as a church. I'm so grateful and that we have Recovery Sunday. It makes me, so happy that, I mean, what other church has that, right? So, it really makes me happy that we have Recovery Sunday. But we were just saying at the beginning before we started, why is it just one Sunday, right? Why is this the only time that we talk about this? And the reason is because we all really are ashamed of it. Now, I wonder what it would be like if we were not. I wonder what it would be like if we were able to talk about this in the same ways that we talk about almost everything that can go wrong with human beings. What if we talked about this just as openly as we talk about other things that are going wrong with folks today? It is so sad to me that if you get a broken leg or a broken arm, instantly on the prayer list, and the joke that we have is instantly the casseroles come out. You got people are going to bring food to your house, something good's going to happen, right? So that's what happens in community. You got a kid that goes to treatment, I think we're going to keep a little quiet about that. I had a bad bout with wine and Xanax last night, not going to call, right? Because we don't talk about it. And that's because we feel like we can blame the person. And I don't think that we can afford that anymore. I may have gone on a little long.
No, that's good. I think I'm going to use... I think I wanted to move next, and hold on to that. I'm going to just pose my question from here. To build on that in terms of thinking about, are there spiritual practices? There's a lot of overlap, I know, between 12 steps and spirituality, the higher power, all, Are there things for each of you all with where you are in your faith, or that you've seen other people in recovery, specific spiritual practices or faith practices that have resonated with you? I know Sandy and I were talking before about contemplative prayer. I thought you might maybe begin by kind of sharing a bit about the connections you see between that and recovery, and then others of you up there can jump in with things that you have found helpful or know to be helpful to other people.
Well, I'd like to start with reading a quote from Thomas Keating in his book, Divine Therapy and Addiction. He says, "The steps are really an engagement in an ever-deepening relationship with God. Divine freedom picks us up when we sincerely believe nobody else will. We then begin to experience freedom, peace, calm, equanimity, liberation from cravings for what we had come to know were harming us, cravings that cannot bring happiness." And as regards maybe to life in general, but to addiction in particular, Thomas Merton says, "Some of us need to discover that we will not begin to live more fully until we have the courage to do and see and taste and experience much less than usual. And for a man who has let himself be drawn completely out of himself by his activity, nothing is more important than to sit still and rest, do nothing at all. Very active resting is the hardest and most courageous act he can perform." Sue Monk Kidd wrote a book on waiting and the sacredness of waiting. And in contemplative prayer, the whole process of recovering, there's a lot of waiting. But developing a relationship with your higher power, in contemplative prayer, you allow God to introduce himself, and for that relationship to develop inwardly. There's a difference in knowing about God and experiencing God deep within us, where the real healing, Thomas Keating calls it divine therapy, can take place. And in contemplative prayer, we allow God to do that deep healing. Is that pretty much answer? Okay.
The Al-Anon prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Most people know that part, but there's another part to it that led me deeper into exploring these words and trying to understand them. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. And I have found comfort and a path to recovery for my journey in a group of women that came out of Al-Anon that met here at this church for many years, but we came as parents. And within time, after many years, somebody said, why don't we form a women's group? I feel more comfortable talking without my husband being in the room. And boy, did we jump on that. We formed a group. It meets at Mountain Brook Community Church, but it's a recovery group, but it's a Christian recovery group, which is a little bit different from Al-Anon. Instead of going by the 12 steps, we go by the Beatitudes. But I have found soul sisters there because when you walk in one of these rooms, you're desperate and looking for help. You're afraid you're not going to find it. Plus, you're afraid somebody might know me in this room. So that can be an issue, but you can overcome that because when you walk in, you find welcoming and love. I'm off subject, aren't I? But this is what has helped me on my spiritual journey. The women in this room that have become like, or the rooms where we meet, become like my sisters. And over the past years, there have been over 400 women who have come through our doors. And we are all helping each other in our recovery and in our relapses.
I realize that I've mentioned the 12 steps, and not everyone may be familiar with what those steps are. But in the third step, we turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand Him. And as I understand Him, is we're open to all faiths and all traditions. And I think the part of our scripture that most speaks to that is, be still and know that I am God. And when we stop our trying to fix and to control, and I'm speaking as someone that loves someone that has this addiction, my addiction is trying to control and to fix and to rescue and all of that. Be still and know that I am God. And then in the 11th step, we, help me, Steve. My mind went blank. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Thank you. And that, through prayer and meditation, we are seeking to deepen our relationship with God. So it is a powerfully spiritual 12 steps.
My path has been, I started in the 12 steps, but I've taken many paths since. And so for me, I actually do a combination of probably 12 steps, Christianity, Buddhism, maybe a little Hinduism. Because I really just have learned over the years that my job is really to be open to the many, many ways that I can find spirituality and grace.
I was so looking forward to what you were going to say. I would have to say that the past 30 years has been more of a deconstruction for me away from certainty. If you had asked me 30 years ago what addiction is and what recovery is, I would have told you exactly. In fact, I taught it because I felt certain that I knew and understood what it was, and I knew and understood what should be done about it. The past 30 years has taught me better. Sometimes in brutal and difficult ways. That all of my certainty was ignorance. I used to believe that if I said, "Hi, my name is Steve and I'm an addict," and you said, "I'm an addict too," that we were both saying the same thing, and that we then understood each other. I used to believe that if we said, "I'm in recovery," and you said, "I'm in recovery too," that we both were saying the same things, and we meant the same things. And I found out that that's definitely not true. The varieties of experience are gigantic, and so are the pathways, as you can hear, just in the four of us. The pathways to get better are many, and one of our enemies is dogma. One of our enemies is certainty, that we're sure that we understand what's going on with people, and we're sure that we understand what should be done about it, because I want you to know that we're often not. We should listen more. And we should not stop at just saying, "Oh, that's addiction," as if that's sort of the end of things. We should keep listening to try to understand what's really happening. Because the limit of labels is very profound. Once we label something, we think we've sort of got it in a box then, like addiction and recovery. And those things mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the reason that matters to us is because we care very much that you get better. We do not care very much how. But we do care that you get better. If you choose a different way to get better than I know about, that's okay. If you get better, that's really, really important. And so for me, I like being right. Probably my first best addiction is being right. And I like being certain based on authority that I can trust. Boy, do I like that. I like being sure of things. And so this turns into a confession. The last 30 years has been like just a taking apart of that. It really has softened me. It's softened my heart and the ways that I approach this and the ways that I approach people. And I guess I'm not the first person to discover that brokenheartedness increases compassion, but boy, it has really taken me apart in I think a very good way, in a very good way. And so what I would say about my own spiritual path is that I've been a lot of places. When we talk about journey, we're not talking about a straight path for this guy. It has been a very interesting and long path, for me, that involves some of the same things that Pam is talking about. For me, meditation is a very, very important part of being okay in the world and of trying to understand what's going on inside my own mind. So meditation has become a very important part of my life. Community is a very important part of my life, which is why the last year and a half has been like so difficult, for me, because I think that I have to get together with other people so that I can hear what you sound like and hear what I sound like, or else I just start listening to myself. And that can be a little bit of a problem for me. So I would say that now I'm the most open that I have been to possibility. I'm the most open that I have been to the mysterious ways that people approach life, their problems, and how to get better from them. I'm having a lot of fun here.
I want to make sure we have time to open things up. If you all here in the parish hall have comments or questions in response to what you've heard from Kay and Sandy and Pam and Steve so far, the mic is yours. Otherwise, I'll come up with more. You could come over to the podium to pose your question.
Hi, I'm Gisela, and thank you so much for sharing. I thought it might be nice to have a general question to start questions off with, but I wanted to say that I struggled with eating disorders when I was in my early 20s and had a very sort of miraculous experience, and but the life journey of healing is a life journey. I'm a theologian now, and I write about all sorts of things, but I've also written about alcohol abuse in relation to my book on the spirituality of wine. And I came upon a book by Bruce Alexander called The Globalization of Addiction, a Study in Poverty of Spirit. And it sort of sent me on a journey that I'm still on, and totally appreciating the work that we do. But we also have to ask, I think, ourselves, and that's what Bruce Alexander says, what is it in our societies? What are the pathological patterns and the premises that our societies, that we cause so many people to move into addiction? Because it is an incredible problem. Some addictions are socially acceptable, like workaholism, that's sanctified if you're successful and work really hard, and yet there can be an addiction. And I thought, as just a general, obviously we don't want to sort of go, well, why are you struggling with this and that? But we do have to ask the general question, what kind of societies do we live in? And that there is so much problem with addiction in this cultural moment. So I wanted to sort of hear what your thoughts on that are.
I don't pretend to know. Well, that Steve will know, and I will pass it down to Pam and Steve. But I believe that one problem is very often we believe that we have a core of badness in our being. And when we shift to recognize that we are made with a core of goodness, from that core of goodness, we don't have as much need to try to mask. We can get in touch with our higher power, with God, without shame. And in a culture that, it's certainly not everywhere, but I think it's fairly prevalent that, we are sinful, and it's often taught in our churches, we are sinful and bad people. And when we recognize that we are made in God's image, that alone begins us on a spiritual journey of healing.
I thought that was a big question, too. I guess my belief is that there's not one thing, because I think addictions is so many different things, and that and maybe it's just something that's always going to be with us and always was with us. Even a lot of times when I have read the Bible, I really can see that that's what people were struggling. That's what they were struggling with, with different problems people were having in biblical times. So I think it was happening then, and I think it will happen forever, but not for one reason, but for different reasons for different people. And I think that, to me, like, one of our biggest problems is trying to, like, address it as one kind of problem rather than the reason Sandy might have her struggles are very different than the ones that I have, than the ones Steve have, than the ones Kay have. And that's why we have such a hard time as a society handling the problems, because we're trying to figure out, is it about community? Is it about spirituality? Is it about genetics? And that maybe it's just about all of them, and that it's not one thing.
That really does beg you to be like very broadly philosophical though about it, though, doesn't it? I think that there's a part of my mind that wakes up in the morning, and the very first thing it goes, I would like to feel good today. More importantly, not feel bad. And then that part of my mind says, I'll get right on that. You're going to need some of this, you're going to need some of that, you're going to need 2 of these, you're going to have to do this, not do that. You're going to need 6 of those. Yeah. And you're going to need more. Whatever it is, you need more. You need more than you've got. And I think that part of my mind is operating all the time. I think it's also the part of my mind that's creative, that seeks to build things and grow things and do things. I don't think this is a bad part of my mind, I really don't. I think it's working for me. But I think that part of me has joined with a broader society to try to produce the result. And so what we have is a gigantic global system that's trying to always give you the more that you're asking for. You need more. Well, here it is. I need a bigger one of that. Well, here it is. And then they start creating for us needs we didn't even know we had. You didn't know you needed this, but now you do. Now you do. You need this too. And so I think that what it's feeding is the notion that if I get something out there, then that will answer my feel good, and more importantly, not feel bad. That this part of my mind is always working on. And I think the system surrounds that basic thing. With the thing that we most commonly call substance use disorder, what it gives is the appearance that I've found the solution. When I ingest the mood-altering substance, all of a sudden it seems like, well, here it is. All I've got to do is keep enough of this on hand, and I'll always feel good, and more importantly, never feel bad, if I can just keep enough of it on hand. But I have to say, we do that with money. We do that with food. We do that with sex. We do that with entertainment. We do that with everything that comes along that seems like it's going to work for us. We go, okay. How about some more? And the entire system grows up around us going, well, here it is. It's a supply and demand thing. If you need more, we've got more for you. We know we'll give you more. So I would argue that it's an ego problem at its core, and that society has grown up around the ego problems of each and all of us. And for that, maybe the only answer is what I would broadly say is a spiritual solution, although not claiming that I know what your spiritual solution should be. That was way broadly philosophical, wasn't it? Yeah, hey, it was the question. The question is what caused that. I can do a long time on that, by the way. Another question? We got time? I don't know where we are on time.
We've got as many as 5 minutes left. If you have a question, come over here. That way we can pick it up on the audio. We've got 5 minutes.
I have a loved one who has substance substance abuse disorder, and is currently on the streets. This morning, when I have custody of her little boy. This morning, when we were driving here, I said, Ryder, this is a very important day in the Episcopal Church, and I told him about is it just called recovery? Is it recovery and rehabilitation? Anyway, it says Recovery Sunday. And he knows a good bit about what's going on with his mom. He's 11, but I said, there's not a whole lot that you can do for her except to pray. And but that is by no means a small thing. But I guess I think that I have only just begun to understand what prayer is. In my 60s. So many times it sounds like when I hear people there's a prayer said out loud, it's kind of like a birthday wish. I want this and this and this, and please make this happen, and et cetera, et cetera. I guess I've determined that the best, like Anne Lamott says, sometimes the only prayers we have are help, 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 but and thank you. But I guess I've decided that what the Holy Spirit can do for me through prayer is and we can call it our higher power if we want to, but what that can do for me is to strengthen me and give me the characteristics, the attitudes, the behaviors, whatever, that will help my daughter instead of enabling her. But I would like to hear any comments you might have to say about the subject of prayer in terms of its healing power for those with addiction.
I'm very sorry for your pain, and I sincerely hope that there's a lot of help for you, your daughter, and your family.
I just wanted to share with you my personal experience. I was homeless too, and I lived on the streets. And I had a lot of people praying for me, and I did say that prayer help, and that was the whole prayer that I had, and that is when my life changed, but it wasn't until I said that prayer.
My heart goes out to you. I raised a granddaughter for several years, and I know what that's like. And I can also say it started me on the journey that has led me to contemplative prayer. And had it not been for COVID, we would have had an introduction to contemplative prayer as an 11th step practice last November. But COVID has that delayed. I may be able to get you some information about some online intros to contemplative prayer, but it is our hope to begin a contemplative prayer as an 11th step group here in Birmingham with introductions as soon as it's safe for us to do so.
My heart breaks for you because I've been there. I understand it. I know our stories are probably different, but the pain is still the same. One thing I did learn from prayer, from the way I prayed, was I wanted God to do this and do this and do this and do this. And that was the wrong way, because I was praying for, anyway, it was wrong. Thy will be done. It's in your hands, Father. Surround my loved one and keep him safe. And over daily, that would be my thoughts. You know, make him better, make him better. He can't live on the street. I can't stand that he lives on the street. Prayer takes time is another thing I found out. Healing takes time. And there are times when you will relapse. When they relapse, you go back down into that hole. But it's easier to get up and out of it every time that happens. And I know we're out of time. Becky, may I close with a prayer? Okay. Bishop Curry helped support. I was very supportive of our Journey Day, and as I told you, she gave the opening. And this was her opening prayer. Oh, blessing Lord, you minister to all who come to you. Look with compassion upon all who, through addiction, have lost their health and freedom. Restore to them the assurance of your unfailing mercy. Remove from them the fears that beset them and strengthen them in their work of their recovery. And for all those who care for them, give them patient understanding and persevering hope. Amen.